Hey guys, I'm Jacinta Robinson and welcome to the Fearlss Podcast, where I interview incredible athletes or specialists in the area of health. Today's guest is a vegan CrossFit athlete and has competed in every game since 2016. He is 4 times Australia's fittest man, 5th fittest CrossFitter on earth. He enjoys sports like surfing, snowboarding, diving, and mountain biking. Not long after an accident that had stopped him from going to the CrossFit Games, he completed an Ironman and finished it in 10 hours and 14 minutes. Though he is talented in many sports, he strongly believes in finding the yin to his yang, to balance out the stresses in the system by using techniques like breathing, meditation practices, heat therapy, floating, stretching, and doing things that give back energy to the body rather than take energy away. I'd like to welcome James Newbury. Welcome to the podcast, James.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So tell us about, you had an accident last year that stopped you from going to the CrossFit Games. And I'd love you to chat about how you recovered from that accident. But before we do, tell us quickly about what happened.
Yeah, so I had a great idea one day that I would go do some downhill mountain biking. And it was in replacement of a different training session. I was just like, I'll downhill mountain bike today instead of going for a road ride. And it was just supposed to be a leisurely ride, and I kind of came around a corner. You know, it was one of those jinxed last run type of efforts. It's like the last run, and then you just always bail. I came around a bend, well, probably a little bit too fast, and then went over the handlebars. And as I went over, obviously had lost control, and I kind of speared a tree stump with my head pretty hard.
Oh.
And in the process, kind of like hit my head hard, and then kind of rolled onto my back, and there was like a protruding branch that came out, and the protruding branch was like old and dead, and it kind of just got me right in the middle of the back. And so in the fall, I ended up puncturing a lung. I broke a few ribs and broke a couple of spinal processes off my back. Just off the back of the vertebrae. And I don't think I had a concussion, but I hit my head pretty hard as well. So I was kind of like in all sorts. I didn't know at the time. I just kind of thought, I've just, winded myself and I'll be all right and get back up and get back down the hill. But I was lying on the ground for 5 minutes and I couldn't get up, and I was just like, oh man, I could feel my fingers and toes, but I was like, maybe I've done a bit more damage than I first thought. And then the boys were just like, maybe you should go to the hospital, and sat around in the hospital for a couple of hours before they saw me. And they said, you've broken a few vertebrae processes, and you've broken a few ribs, and you have a punctured lung, and rah, rah, rah. And I was like, oh man, they're just like, you're not leaving tonight. I was like, damn. So that was the accident. And that kind of, that was right in the middle of the CrossFit Open. So that was on the weekend of week 3 and of 5 weeks. So that kind of took me out from finishing off that competition to gain a spot early to the CrossFit Games for 2020. That was the injury.
And did you know about your punctured lung? Like, they say that when that happens, it's like incredible pain.
Well, it was decently hard to breathe. Like, I thought I just winded myself pretty bad, and I just couldn't take a deep breath. And then when it didn't subside after about an hour, I was like, maybe I have done a bit of damage. So that it hurt. It did hurt, but sitting still, it wasn't that bad. Maybe like a 6 out of 10. But then when I moved, like trying to move me or sitting down was really difficult. Sitting down, standing up, getting up out of bed, like contracting any muscles in my back. It was more so that the muscles around my back felt really jacked, like someone had like just hit me in the middle of the back with like a sledgehammer, and it was like really like on fire. It was pretty painful for a few days. I was in hospital for 5 days. And then as soon as I got out of hospital, I was like, I got to get moving. I was like, I don't think I've ever in my life laid down. No, I haven't. I've never laid down for 5 days straight and wasn't allowed to move. I was just like, this is so weird. So yeah, I definitely could feel that I had a punctured lung once they told me it was punctured. I was like, yeah, I can kind of see how that can work. It's like you can only take in like a 10% breath. So you'd go to breathe in and you'd only get, a very small margin of your breath done, and everything would get constricted and everything would feel tight. So you couldn't take it anymore. But every day I maybe gained an extra 5% of breath every day. I could just breathe in just a touch deeper.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And so when they told you that you had to lay in bed for 5 days and then you're like, oh, I need to get up and move, what was going through your mind? Like, did you know what you should do for recovery, or is this the start of your, your learning in different avenues on how you could recover your body faster?
Well, the thing about it, as soon as they said, oh, like you've done some damage and you're not going to be able to do any type of exercise or anything for at least 6 weeks, I was just like, oh, game on. I get to like put all of the tools in the toolbox to work to try and see how fast I can recover. So I kind of looked at it as a bit of a challenge to see how fast I could recover, because I had an Ironman coming up in 5 weeks' time, which I didn't want to miss out on. So I really wanted to get that done, because I had basically roped probably a dozen people from my gym to come do it with me, and there was no way I was letting them have all the fun. So I was just like, I'm going to recover, and I'm going to have to kiss the open goodbye, but I'm going to try and make it back to do the Ironman in 5 weeks. So I basically, instead of training for 4 or 5 hours a day, I just spent that time doing as much working in as possible. So looking at things like sleep was key, like lots of sleep for regeneration and trying to heal the bones really quick. Jumping in the float tank to try and get as much magnesium in, visualizing the bones healing, and doing a lot of visual practice in there, and breath work, and trying to oxygenate the system. Getting out in the sun like multiple times a day. I've probably spent more time in the sun during that period than I have ever before. And I think that played a huge role. Getting outside, and I'd usually spend my morning just standing out on the grass or sitting on the grass out the back, getting sun and earthing as much as I could, just to try and decrease as much inflammation and try and just to reconnect. And then I live very close to the beach too. So getting in the ocean, so getting in the salt water, getting in the sand and the sun, and getting cold. So I was like, oh, I can put all of these cool practices that I love doing anyway, and I can just kind of turbocharge it and do them like twice as much. And the good thing about a lot of these things, they're not active. A lot of these things are passive. They're passive terms of recovery. So laying in a float tank, sitting in a sauna, laying on your back on the ground, just doing breath work. They're very, very passive. So it wasn't like these things were stressing me anymore. They were just, really drawing as much energy in, trying to just speed up that healing process. And then just making sure my nutrition was on point and giving myself the right tools and or the right ingredients to repair. So I kind of saw it as a bit of a challenge, and to put all the things that I've learned over the years to work.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's take it back to, first of all, grounding yourself. Like, some people haven't heard that before. What does that actually mean?
So grounding is connecting to like true earth. So trying to earth ourselves to proper ground. Like, we spend a lot of our time either walking on concrete or bitumen or wearing rubber-soled shoes. But the act of getting grounded is trying to reconnect to the earth to its full extent, to try and bring back the rhythm or the electrical impulse that we should be reconnected to. We run at a particular hertz frame, so we want to try and basically reconnect our bodies to be back in that in sync rhythm. Whereas when we get disconnected and we surround ourselves with things like Wi-Fi and connections and other electrical currents and things like that, it puts our impulses out of whack. So the idea behind earthing is to bring ourselves back to balance and get ourselves the right current moving through our body.
And I think it's quite interesting because it sounds bizarre, right? It sounds so like,
sounds like voodoo.
Yeah, exactly. But you're like, oh my God. And when you do it yourself, you can really feel it. Like, I know when I go out to nature and I go for a run or just even a walk, you can tell the difference in your body when you take off your shoes and you're just present in that environment.
I agree completely. And I think for a lot of people, and the way that we kind of, inherently like our lifestyles these days, that connection is lost a lot. So people don't know what they're missing out on, and somewhat desensitized to how good they could potentially feel. But I don't know anyone ever that doesn't go for a really relaxed nature walk and tells me that makes them feel bad.
Yeah.
It's
so
just
true.
not the way. Yeah. It's like, it's calming. It's so calming. And even just breathing fresh air and getting connected with nature, it just makes everyone, it's just such a sympathetic side of the nervous system that's activated during those times. So we need to do that more than, at least balance out the amount that we get into that yang state. We need to balance it with as much yin as possible.
And I think in the society at the moment, we're confused about that because we're getting told like we need to be this certain way and we need to work all the time and we need to, do all this crazy stuff. And we're like, oh my God, where is the balance with that?
Yeah.
And it's finding that and trying to understand how is that actually benefiting us? Because I think a lot of the time we're looking for that result. We want it now. Like someone said to me the other day, like, what motivates you? And I was like, oh my gosh, like motivation isn't something, it's not something you just find and you just get it and it happens. And it's same with all of these recovery methods that you're talking about. It's not something you just get and then you're fixed. It's something that you can't see and you got to do it more and then embrace that and you will connect back with the earth. Like we have everything that we need in nature. We just forget about it.
Totally. And ultimately it comes down to getting back to the raw basics and not overcomplicating it. Like you can use things like little biohacks, like jumping in a float tank or jumping in an infrared sauna. But, we can go jump in the ocean or get out in the sunlight and we're getting the very rawest of the raw, like back to the basic element. Like if you can't afford to, jump in a float tank every fortnight or every week or go jump in the sauna, you've got sunlight for a good portion of the year somewhere. And you've got, beach and ocean and rivers and things that you can go jump into and get cold and get salty. And all those things just bring you back to the basics and they make you feel amazing. Like every time I jump in the ocean, like I went for a surf this morning and I got there at dawn, like first sunlight, and we're out in the water just after first sunlight. And I'm still salty at the moment. My hair is full of salt. And it was just the best. I was sitting out there with 3 of my mates and I was just like, oh, this is living. It's so good.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I also really think, especially with the way that I want to perform, which is I want my body to perform at a high level, no matter whether it's, competing in CrossFit or whether it's, running a business well. I want to be a high performer, but I still understand that it just can't be all hustle. If it's all hustle and no yin time, then my bucket will overflow. I will get too stressed out. I will start to decline in the way that I perform. And I understand that there are some times where I need to just give a little back, take some water out of that bucket and just stop it from overflowing. And I can feel when I'm getting close to there. I've been there before and, motivation for all the things that I love is just sapped away from me. And I'm just like, why am I feeling like this? It's just like, there were times there where you shouldn't have had, the extra coffee in the day. There were times there where you shouldn't have taken on the extra task or the extra obligation and, you just run yourself dry. And if you don't start to pay attention to those things, it can cause havoc and all the things that do make you happy end up not making you happy at all.
Absolutely. It's coming back to being present with yourself and the body's giving you feedback all the time. So that's a really interesting lesson that you're learning as well. Like what you just said, when you have too much coffee, like I was getting to a point where I was having, I think it was like 7 coffees a day and I was getting,
I feel ya.
Yeah. And I was like falling asleep at like 6:30 and my partner was like, this is ridiculous. Like you're running your body into the ground. It's too much. Like you're highly stressed on one side and your body's trying to recover with sleeping. And I think the quicker that you can become conscious with what's going on with your body giving you feedback, the easier it is, like what you're saying, to get back into balance.
Totally. I agree completely. 100%.
So tell me about like you're saying about the sun. When you talk about getting out in the sun, do you mean getting that vitamin D back into the system? Is that what you're implying? Yeah. How that's beneficial for you?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it goes, and I'm not, like I have done just a little bit of, I wouldn't even call it research because I haven't researched anything in my life enough to call it research, but basically from things that I get to see people do and the effects that they get from it, from people that have researched it, have made me go and try and do these things myself and see how I feel. So getting out in the sun, probably on such a level that it helps the mitochondria function a little bit better. And I know, and I put it into practice when I go and compete, because normally we compete indoors under man-made lights and we don't get to see sunlight. So if I can get out in the sun prior to events, I always come into the events feeling just so much more buzzed. I feel like I've got tons of energy. I feel like I've got tons of oxygen. I feel heaps better when I get some sun prior to events. So I'm just like, okay, cool. This is how it makes me feel. I'm going to keep doing it. So yeah, definitely getting vitamin D. And I also think the sun helps us with like vasodilation, so increasing blood flow, things like that as well. But also I think it helps the mitochondria function a lot better too. So that powerhouse in every cell, I feel like we can, utilize and create energy a lot better when we get more sunlight. And I think there's some more research coming out about some type of reaction that happens on a really, really small level in terms of getting sunlight that, makes us function better, and it's good for our hormones. And I think there's a plethora of things that are great from the sun. And I wouldn't be able to name them all to any extent, but I just know when I get out in the sun, I do feel a lot better. I feel happier, and I perform better too. I try and train as much as I can in the sun. I try and make sure I get, I don't always shade my eyes from the sun wearing sunglasses all the time. I do sometimes, but I always try and make sure that I can get some, 10 a.m. sun and not wear any sunglasses, and try and just soak it up as much as possible. It does make me feel better. So I try and push it as much as I can.
Yeah. And then when you talk about like the either the salt water in the float tank, explain what you're talking about there, because you were saying about some breathing techniques when you're in the float tank. Like I know myself, like I love going for a float. There is nothing like a float.
Oh my God.
But like, what are some of the
Best.
benefits? Like I know like when you go in, it relaxes the muscle, you're getting that magnesium back into the system. But what are some other things that you've discovered that it's helped you with?
Totally. So probably the number one thing that I can think of with the float tank is visualization. So visualizing outcomes, seeing things before they happen. Not to say that, the story is going to plan out exactly how you visualize it in the float tank, but, to the extent of, if I've got a competition coming up and I know what the events are going to be, and I've practiced those events in my gym prior to going to the event, if we are so lucky to get that done, I can go through that workout back to back 50 times over before I go out to the floor and do it at competition. And I know how it's going to feel. I know how it's going to, what it's going to sound like. I know my timing. I know what I'm going to have to, how much effort I'm going to have to put in here. So that visualization process allows you to have less thought and less energy wasted on the floor on the day to help you perform better. The same thing goes if you're, wanting to learn a new language. You're in that theta brainwave state, either whether you're thinking about, like you've just done a session where you go and, you've gone to a shoot and you're learning a new language and you go jump in the float tank and you jump in that theta brainwave state. All that memory and all the things that you just learned are being embedded and retaught and gone over and over and over again in your head. So for one, you can visualize, you can learn, you pick things up, obviously super calming. And then the breath work that you can add into that stuff as well helps to oxygenate the system. So getting yourself the healing process of the oxygen, making sure you can, alkalize the blood and treat inflammation and heal sore muscles and tendons a lot faster just by oxygenating the system. So yeah, there's so many good things. Sorry, that's my dog's going crazy. They saw someone out the front. It's probably another dog. It'll be over in 1 minute. No, they're probably done now.
This is the dash hounds, right?
The two dash hounds. Like they see people that come over all the time and they're best friends while they're here. Then they come back and it's just like, oh no, they're coming to hurt me. It's like, no, they're not. They're coming to give you a pat. Just relax.
Oh, they're so cute. I see them on social and they're very adorable. They love following you. It looks like it.
Yeah, they are attached at the hip, that's for sure.
Oh,
But
so
yes,
cute.
the float tank, it's a great place to visualize. So I would highly recommend, and even if you're going to, do a speech, or you're going to do a presentation, getting in the float tank to calm your nerves and to think about how you're going to do it and to slow down and not to rush everything. That's a really good place to embed good practices, because you're not being distracted by anything else. There's no distraction. There's no light. There's no gravity. There's nothing in there other than you just getting in tune with what you're about to do. And I can jump in the float tank every day leading up to a competition for a week, and I could run through the workouts back to back, 40 or 50 times every session. And 9 times out of 10, if you do a workout in the gym and then you repeat it the next week, you'll probably do better. So I'm coming into the event more prepared, and I don't have to stress out. I already know how it's going to feel. I probably know what time I'm going to get, or roughly. And I'm just much more relaxed. And if I'm relaxed, I'm usually happy. And if I'm relaxed and happy, I usually compete better. So that's how I like to utilize it.
Yeah. And do you feel like you recovered more, as in like your muscles as well, for the performance? Because like
100%.
having that magnesium going straight into the system would, then you wouldn't have to worry about like the lead up of going, oh my God, I'm a little bit sore. I don't know how I'm
Yeah,
going to perform with that. Um,
totally.
so yeah, I think
Totally. Oh yeah, I completely agree. The magnesium, like we use magnesium for, over 300 different chemical reactions in the body. It's in every cell inside the body. We need it to, perform so many different functions, building blood and hormones and other bits and pieces and enzymes and yada, yada, yada. Magnesium is something that we're so deficient in as a population, that I think if everyone could just go jump in a float tank like once a fortnight, everyone would probably feel 10 times better, and, would be able to sleep better at night. A lot of people are probably lacking in that, and they can't, produce the right hormones to help them go to sleep and help them wake up and to do all the things. Like, people wake up groggy and they don't know why, but it's maybe they're lacking some type of vitamin or mineral that they're not getting in their diet. There's so many different things that the float tank can help with, and magnesium in itself. And topically, we just absorb it's just so much better. I think, we can have as many different, magnesium supplements that we ingest, but getting it topically is just fantastic.
yeah, I think it's the best way. And I know that depending on your diet will depend on how deficient you are with the magnesium. Like I was reading this thing about when you consume like Coke and highly processed sugars, that you extract magnesium to try and process that down in the body. So
Hmm.
if we're consuming these foods and we're lacking it even more, then no wonder why
Yeah.
we're feeling deficient and feeling like we can't perform the same.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I think our bodies, they have to react in a way to combat our environmental stresses that we put in place, and all the goodness that we do give to it, is probably being diminished by just subtle things that we do that we don't know that it's actually having that reaction. So if we could be a little bit more, uh, if we could be a little bit more
Like
purposeful
aware
in
of
the
it.
way that we aware of the things that we're doing, and it doesn't take very much at all. Like, probably the biggest thing that I'd tell people is, like, just try and keep it basic. And if you're doing something that's giving you more stress, like if you try and cram in 5 different working in protocols in a day, and it's giving you more stress because you're not getting them done, there's no point doing any of them. It's like, just do one, and do one really well, and it could be 5 minutes of breathing, and you're good. Like, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell us about breathing. Like, I know Wim Hof has come out and he's amazing with his techniques and he talks about that. But what got you into it?
Yeah, so I actually discovered, like, breathing more purposefully through a guy named Brian McKenzie. He was old school, like original CrossFit, like OG. He did like a lot of the endurance stuff. And he's done a lot of stuff with surfers and, people looking to increase their endurance. He was a really good endurance athlete, probably still is. And I met him in 2016, and he said, I just met him in a gym, and he was taking someone for a session. And we just got into a bit of a chat about the CrossFit Games, which I was leading up to. He's like, oh, do you want to come over to my house and do some ice baths and some sauna and a bit of breath work? I was like, hell yeah, that sounds great. So yeah, he just invited me over to his place and picked up ice along the way and sat in an ice bath and did some sauna and taught us some breath work. And he's just like, yeah, man, this breath work will change the way that you compete. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm prepared. Like I'm quite open-minded when it comes to new stuff, and I'll never shut anything out unless I give it a go. And I started doing it, and it just made me feel so much better. Like I could, when I first started trying to do breath work while working out, like nasal breathing, I think I could nasal breathe up to around about 130 beats a minute. And after that, I felt like I was way out of breath. And now I can pretty much nasal breathe all the way up to like 95% of my max heart rate, to like 165, 170 beats a minute. And, I could still nasal breathe and almost maintain conversation. So it's just being a more efficient breather. It helps to oxygenate the system. You get more oxygen to the tissues. You have this nitric oxide that gets released because you've got that pooling at the back of the nose that we don't get when we mouth breathe. Nasal breathing helps to calm the vagus nerve, which puts us into a more parasympathetic state. So we're not so heightened all the time, not crazily heightened. And if we could spend more time nasal breathing instead of over mouth breathing all the time, instead of being in a relaxed situation when you go for a walk, when it's supposed to be relaxed and you're mouth breathing on this walk, you're putting yourself, it's like the reverse effect. It's like you're mouth breathing all the time and it's putting you into that fight or flight, because that's instant fight or flight response. Yes, there's a time and a place for it, but if we could spend most of the time just breathing through the nose only, unless obviously we're talking, then we're actually really putting ourselves in that parasympathetic and having that wind down period to balance out all the hustle and bustle.
So tell us, James, like, let's just say like I wanted to go for a run. How do I start training myself? Like just some simple tips for the listeners to start doing that. Because the only thing I can think about is putting sticky tape on my mouth.
Yeah. And that's a really good way to do it. Honestly,
that's
really?
A great
way. Get some duct tape and duct tape your mouth. And that's a really good tool to actually utilize is, duct tape your mouth. So what I would suggest is go for a walk or a run, or it'll probably be a bit of both just to begin with. Nasal breathe only. And then when you get to the point where you feel like you can't nasal breathe anymore, and you have to go to mouth breathing, just stop running and walk until you regain composure, and then start the jog again. And then when you get there again, relax, and then, go back to a walk. So every time that you feel like your heart rate's getting too high and you can't maintain nose breathing to keep up with the oxygen supply, then go back to a walk and calm it back down through the nose only. And then keep doing that. And eventually you'll be able to just go for a 20K run through the nose only. Like every long distance effort that I've ever done, I did it all through the nose. Like I ran for the Ironman. I spent the whole time on the bike and the whole time on the run, which was a 180K bike and a marathon run, breathing only through the nose. And it was,
wow.
It made such a difference in terms of staying relaxed. It also helped keep me to a pace that was manageable instead of, shooting out the gates way too hot. So it kept me at a pace that was going to keep me going for the time that I needed to be able to keep going. So it does help regulate how fast you can go too. And then obviously the better and more efficient you become with your breath and your oxygen, the faster you can go breathing through the nose.
I have to admit, like your time was impressive.
Oh,
you did it in what was like 10 hours and 14 minutes? Something like
got it in 10 hours. I was pretty devastated I didn't get under 10, but not to worry. I was actually thinking in my head when I got about to the halfway mark of the marathon, I was like, holy shit, man, you can actually come under 10 hours. Fucking go. And it's just like, but then literally that's where I hit a wall too. So, I had to, I'd have to do another one so I can try and get under 10 hours, but I think I'd probably put a little bit more training into it. I probably did, like on average, I probably trained maybe 7 hours a week for the Ironman with specific triathlon training. And then maybe 9 hours with the maybe 3 or 4 weeks leading into the Ironman while I had my back injury. So if I did it next time, I'd probably give it maybe like 10 or 12 hours a week for say 3 months leading in. And then I think I'd be pretty confident, depending on the course, that I could, hopefully come under 10 hours, which would be, I think that's a good goal.
Yeah, that's epic. I think that'll be really incredible. We'll definitely be cheering you on, all of us listeners, when you do it. So now you have to do it.
I'll have a crack for sure. Like definitely, like I'm already looking forward to trying another 70.3. Hopefully if Melbourne 70.3 is on, otherwise I'll probably come up to Cairns and try the 70.3 in September in Cairns.
Yeah. Crazy. So James, like everything you've been telling us basically is to optimize your performance in your health. And I'd love to talk about your food. So as as I know, and maybe not the listeners, you're vegan, and I obviously really love that about you. But tell me about what was the reason behind why you went vegan, because you haven't been vegan all your life.
No. So I made the decision in October last year, and everything just boiled down to my number one reason, and the only reason that is, of note for me is I just didn't want to be contributing to any animal cruelty. That's all. That's number one. I didn't want to be a part of any industry that, took the lives of animals. I didn't want to, I love animals. I respect them. I think they're amazing. And I don't want to have anything to do with, either causing them discomfort or pain or taking their life. That was my number one reason. And I guess like number two and number three, obviously it comes down to also some environmental impacts and health, but they're not even close to my number one reason. Yes, there's definitely benefits in both of those two things there, but there's a much deeper reason, and that's just not to cause any harm.
And then, so do you worry about, like, from the past, like mine was completely different. So I didn't so much really get into the industry. I guess I wanted to kind of push it to the side and not admit it to myself that was what was happening. And the reason why I originally went vegan was because I was like, oh my God, the health benefits, like the meat ferments in the stomach for 2 to 3 days. And so I started learning about how I could optimize my health with, what you put in, becoming more hydrated and stuff like that. So do you find that because you are incorporating more plants into your diet, that with your performance, you feel like that you are performing better? Or do you feel like because like a lot of people believe like you need to have the meat to have like the nutrients from the meat, and that helps you with your performance. So what's your thoughts now that you've had both?
Well, I definitely think that you can 100% thrive and do well and be also, a strength-based athlete eating a plant-based diet 100%. I didn't see any extravagant differences in terms of, I didn't get a massive boost in energy. I didn't get a huge, massive change in how I completely felt. I wasn't eating a lot of meat prior. Anyway, but I definitely think I'm definitely much more conscious of everything that goes onto my plate and into my body. And if anything now, I'm just having way more different colorful varieties of food and plant food that it's only going to be good for phytonutrients. It's only going to be good for antioxidants. It's only going to be good for increasing hydration levels. It's only going to be good for getting, as many different plant-based proteins in as possible, lots of healthy fats and things that aren't rancid and deteriorating, and all those types of things. So I definitely think that you can thrive on a plant-based diet, even if you do want to compete in high-level sport, which was originally the reason why I didn't want to go down the path, because I thought it might hamper getting strong. And I knew I needed to be strong. And I guess I kind of turned a blind eye to my number one reason now. And I kind of shied away from seeing what was actually happening. So I kind of, I guess like yourself, just kind of just like looked away and just didn't watch. But yeah, after doing it now, and so I started in October last year, and I could compete on exactly the same level, if not better, on a plant-based diet, no problem, easy.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Hey, I feel like a lot of people, like even right now, I've been studying the people that live the longest in the world, the blue zone people.
Yeah.
And some of their diets, like I think the Japanese women, like is 60% sweet potatoes. And it's like, come on, these people living over 100, they're doing something right. and then
Yeah.
having minimal animals, which I think is really really
Yeah.
fascinating.
I think the blue zones are a really intriguing area to look at, an area to watch and study. I watched a friend of mine did a bit of a tour around to all the blue zones, and he did a bit of a doco on it, and it was really cool. And it's quite eye-opening to see how everyone lives a very different lifestyle in terms of where they are. But yeah, a lot of it is, not a lot of meat, not a lot of animal products, and it's just a bunch of good plant food. And yeah, it is quite fascinating. I wish I'd started earlier, to be honest. But I think there is a lot to be said. Like, and I know people are going to be like, "Oh, you've only been vegan since October last year, and you haven't even gotten to the point where you're going to start to feel bad. Don't worry, it'll come." And I've had that before already. Some people are just like, "Wait until you get 1 year down the track," and then other people are like, "Wait until you get 3 years down the track," and then other people are like, "Wait until you get 5 years down the track." It's like, yeah, okay, whatever, I get it. But to be honest, like, regardless of the situation, I know that I'm getting all the macronutrients that I need. I know I'm getting all the vitamins and minerals that I need. I know I'm getting plenty more than I was getting before. There's no reason as to why I shouldn't feel just as good, if not better.
Absolutely. So tell us, what does a day of food look like for you? Like, what are some
Well,
really favorite things that you love to have?
well, I'm a massive oat fan. So I've been doing
Oh, me too.
I love oats. Like, my oat chronicles is like, I've got a big store of photos of all my oatmeals. But yeah, oats in the morning is usually something, and I usually fast for the first few hours of the day. Just makes me feel better. If I, get up and have a sauna, or go for a surf, and then have some food maybe 3 or 4 hours after I wake up, sometimes a little bit more if I'm not feeling it. But yeah, I usually break my fast with some oats, and I'll usually put a little bit of hemp protein or such-inchy nut protein in there, with a bunch of berries and nuts and seeds and things like that, and sort of beef it up in that way. And then I'm a big smoothie fan too. So I have probably 3 or 4 smoothies a day. So I love smoothies. And those smoothies are usually made up of probably about 500 mils of coconut water, maybe a couple of bananas, or when I say a couple, 4 or 5 bananas.
Yeah.
And then maybe if I've got dates on hand, I'll have a date or 2 in there as well. And then maybe some chia, put some chia in there. And then maybe a bit of, like hemp protein or such-inchy protein or rice protein or something like that, just to beef it up. So that's like a kind of smoothie. And maybe if I've got it on hand as well, some spinach, just chuck some spinach leaves in there. And if I have extra berries, like at the moment, berries are like $7 a punnet. So I don't waste my berries in my smoothies. I'll put them on top of oats instead.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love berries too. So blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, amazing strawberries. And then for like a lunch style thing, I'll probably have like a tofu scramble or like a tempeh scramble, maybe on some sourdough, something like that, with some lightly seared spinach or kale. And then of an evening, I'll probably have something like a vermicelli bowl, like a rice noodle bowl with either tofu or tempeh or black beans or lentils, with, just as many different colorful foods as possible, lots of herbs. We grow mint and coriander and basil and everything here. So we'll just grab it from whatever we have on the windowsill, and we just chuck that all over the top. And then we just add in like pomegranate seeds and, and we get it. So that's our protein source is like the lentils or whatever it may be. Kind of the carbohydrate source is our rice noodles or rice, whatever, or even like quinoa, like a quinoa pasta or something like that. And then just as many different leafy greens and colorful plants as possible. And that'll be like a dinner. And then another absolute favorite that I almost can't go a day without having is an avocado mousse.
Oh, yum.
Mm.
And how do you
One
make
of my
that? Just
favorites.
avocado and cacao and
Pretty much that's it. So like, to make it like really thick and mousse-like, you just don't add the banana. Like, I find every time I add the bananas, it kind of makes it more like a smoothie bowl. Whereas if you want it really mousse-like, definitely just do an avocado. So like, easy recipe is 1 avocado, a tablespoon of raw cacao, a tablespoon of maple, and then a good pinch of sea salt, and give it a blend, and maybe pop a little bit of coconut or almond milk in there just to get it moving, but only a dash. And then you just spice it up on top, and you put some pepitas on there. You could pop some sesame seeds on there, and then just top it with some berries or some dates, or your favorite little go-tos just to chuck on top. Or even if you wanted to be somewhat naughty, you could put on some some vegan semi-sweet chocolate drops or something like that. That's amazing.
Yeah, now I'm getting hungry.
Well, like if I ever come up to Brisbane, I'll have to make you some, because it's just the best.
Oh, sounds amazing. So,
or like you could top it with goji berries as well.
Yeah, goji berries are really yum. I love the texture of them.
The best.
So tell us, James, because I find like a lot of people, when they are doing the switch, like I've been vegan a little bit longer than you, but when people get into it to start off with, they get in their head, they're stuck in this traditional of what's my protein, what's my fats, and what's my carbs. And they're just like, oh my God, I've just got to focus on the protein. Usually when they make the switch. What did you find that you struggled with? Like what was your main things? Were you focused on getting heaps of protein in with your training, or were you more focused on the carbs? Like what did you find?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I wanted to focus on was trying to get in as many different leafy greens and vegetables as possible. That was the major thing. Like I wasn't so fussed about the macros. It was more so making sure I was getting in tons of micros. I felt like I could achieve my macro targets quite easily. And I just really wanted to make sure that I wasn't being stingy on getting in, a ton of fruits and vegetables each day. So I was kind of aiming for around that 800 grams to a kilo of good, colorful leafies. That was the major thing.
Yeah, like I find for myself, I'm like, okay, just keep the fats to about 20% and then don't worry about the rest. And I feel like when you have that mind frame, you're not worried about, because protein is pretty much in everything. It's just the amount of how much is in that particular item. And I think sometimes we get so fascinated thinking, oh, we need to like have like heaps of scoops of protein and then minimal amount of carbs, when really it's just energy, and too much protein can be too much heartache on our body to digest.
Oh, totally. Well, prior to doing it, I was probably roughly getting in around about 220, 230 grams of protein a day. And now I'm doing around about 160, and I'm just as strong as I was before. I haven't lost any weight. I look pretty much the same. I have been training a little bit less of late, just because we've been doing some renovations and some other bits and pieces, and I'm always giving myself extra jobs somewhere. So I haven't been doing a ton of training for the last couple of months. But in saying that, going off around about 160 grams of protein a day, I feel the same. Like I was probably having way too much before. I don't think we need to have quite as much as what was first thought. And basically, as long as I'm kind of getting around about there, I know I'm going to be okay. And then the rest is just intuitive. You've got to do it by feel and become in tune. And, there are days where I have too much fat and I can tell. Like, I'm just like, okay, I've overdone it with the fat today, because, I might still be super full in the morning. And if I'm super full in the morning, I know I've probably overdone it with something like that. And it's usually the fat for me. Like, I put nuts and seeds pretty much in almost every meal. And my avocado mousse, I don't skimp. So I sometimes even have 2 avocados. So, but it just depends. And it depends how much workload I'm doing. I probably could handle it if I was training a little bit more at the moment, but I'm just kind of surfing and playing the training game by ear at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting. I think for everybody listening, it's about going in, testing, like what you said, and being your own observer and seeing how you're feeling, and if that's working for you, and whether you want to continue doing that, or should you adapt slightly.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Sorry, you go.
Oh, okay. So even just going by that feel thing. So for instance, the other day I woke up, this is like 2 days ago, I woke up to go for a surf, and it was like 4:30 in the morning, and I wanted to get an early start. And so I woke up, I had my apple cider vinegar and water. And then I don't normally do this, but I had some sourdough. I cooked some sourdough and I put a little bit of peanut butter on there, and I had that. And then like probably like half an hour later, I started getting a crook feeling in the stomach, and I was like, oh. And then for the rest of that whole day, didn't feel great. And then I was like, yeah, that's probably, something that doesn't work super well with me. And I tried it for 2 days, and it was like, yeah, same feeling. And then as soon as I just fasted instead of had something directly upon waking, I felt heaps better. I was like, okay, cool. So I can now establish that if I'm waking up like early like that, and I'm just going to go for a surf, I probably don't need to have anything. I can just have my water and be on my way.
Mm. Do you think though, with the sourdough, maybe it was the breaking, like the first meal, that you were having something that, because not all breads, I don't know where you get your bread from, but not all breads are all great for you.
Equal. Yeah, totally. I agree. Yeah, no, definitely. And there are some breads that I will steer clear of. We do have a pretty good baker here that does a really good fermented sourdough. A lot of it's broken down, and it has some of them. Well, this one in particular, I know has some good bacteria, good gut bacteria. So, for instance, yeah, there are definitely some that I would steer clear of, but I would always prefer to break my fast with oats. Like that's something that I know works really well for me and I really enjoy. Plus a good bowl of oats is just so much nicer than just a piece of sourdough for me. So next time I'll know if I want to break my fast early, try some oats, or just, fast for a little bit longer.
Yeah. And so talking about the fasting, I saw on Instagram that you went to Bali recently and you did a 7-day fast. What kind of fast did you do first? Was it like completely no food, or were you having soups, or what were you doing?
Yeah. So basically we left for Bali to do this 7-day fast the day after the Ironman finished. So we had a day there where we could, refeed, and then we started the fast, and the fast consisted of 4 cold pressed juices a day, but the juices weren't big juices. They were only like 120 to 150 mils of cold pressed. Like I'm pretty sure they put in there like celery and spinach, pressed juice, and carrot, and maybe carrot. And then they'd put a bit of bentonite clay, psyllium husk. And I think some of them had a bit of bentonite clay. So all of them are around about 20 calories, I think, per juice, or somewhere around there, 20 to 25 calories. So not enough to break us out of that fast, I guess in some people's opinion. And that was basically what we had throughout the day. So we had 4 of those each day, just to try and help the detox process and, to keep the hydration levels up. But we could also drink water as much as we like. So water and tea were kind of limitless. So we could have water and tea. And then of an evening, we would have just a veggie broth. So basically just the water from boiled veggies was basically what we would have for dinner.
Yeah. And what was the reasoning? You said like you did this after Ironman. Was this because you knew that after Ironman you would have lactic buildup, like toxins in the system, or was this because something else?
Yeah, this was something that I've actually wanted to do since about 2012. And I've always, kind of the same thing about changing to a plant-based diet. I was always scared that if I did it, I would get super weak, wouldn't be able to put the weight back on. I'd lose all my muscle, and I wouldn't be able to lift and compete anymore. And it's just this thing that goes through your brain and you just worry. But no, my partner did one back in 2012 and she absolutely loved it. Said she felt such mental clarity, like never before, and made her feel amazing. So I always wanted to experience it, and I'm always will try something for the experience, whatever it may be, just so I can see what it feels like. And, it's just a really good time for a bit of a clean out. I just changed my diet to a plant-based diet, just give my body a bit of a reset. And I loved it. I had such a good time doing that. Like I was hungry for maybe the first meal. So that morning when we woke up, there was no breakfast and I would have got a bit hungry then. But after that, it stayed the same. Like I was not hungry for the next 7 days. Until I broke my fast. And you were also doing enemas too. So you do an enema morning and night. So overall you've done like 12 enemas, because then on the last day you did a high colonic. So just a really good clean out. And you just feel I was very light, mind you. I got down to 77 kilos, but Obviously a lot of glycogen had been removed. Like you were running on fumes. Like at the end of the day, there wasn't a lot there. But yeah, just a really good reset for the body, and really activate autophagy and to clean out anything that didn't need to be there. And yeah, I got back to weight after the fast within about 2 to 3 weeks. I didn't lose any muscle. I didn't lose any strength. It was fantastic, and I would definitely do it again.
Yeah, wow. The people that do it, I've met people that have done it for like 30 days, and their eyes are like white, and if they've got wrinkles, they're like plumped out. It's insane what it does. Like the body's able to heal now rather than spending its time digesting the food that we're eating or being active throughout the day.
It's so crazy. I agree completely. Like you do feel very vibrant, and even like your thought processes, like when you get to like day 5, even you're just like, you get asked a question, and you're just like, poof, 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 poof. It's just like you're all over it. You're like, your mental clarity is insane, and you just feel so good for it. Like you finish it, and you're just like, oh, I feel like a newborn baby. That's what you feel like.
Really? Wow. It sounds like something that I'm definitely going to have to do. So for people listening, like you went to Bali, is there a special place that you should be doing these fasts at? Do you recommend?
Yeah. So I went to Natural Instinct Healing, and the reason why we chose to do it in Bali is because it's a place that we absolutely love, and we go over there as much as we can, but it's also getting yourself out of the rat race. So trying to make sure that you're going to be as relaxed and de-stressed as possible. So taking away, you don't train, you can do some yoga, you can do some breath work and meditation, but you're not putting yourself in a stressful environment. You're not putting yourself in a working environment. You're not physically stressing yourself out. You'd go for a walk each morning, but you're not, your aim of the game is to be as parasympathetic as possible the entire time. So a complete reset. You're not doing the craziness that you do from day to day like we normally do. And to do it like that is much better. It allows your body to do that proper reset instead of, starving yourself at the same time and then also trying to stress yourself at the same time. It doesn't work as well. So trying to get a way to do it and be somewhere where you're not going to be stressed out, that's key.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like when you're at home, you go back to the rhythm of what you're normally used to. So it'd be good to be able to be disconnected. I'm here for this, and this is the purpose.
Yep, 100%. And I think that's the best way to do it.
And so, James, with your, you've done these incredible things with your training, and you were just saying that you wanted to do the next, the Ironman, the 70.3, but what are some massive goals that you've got for yourself?
Well, I always find something that's going to intrigue me. I definitely want to get my skydiving license. I think once Corona's done, that's definitely something I want to do. But I also really would like to go surf some decent waves somewhere else other than Adelaide. So I would like to, I surf in Bali from time to time, but I would like to go do maybe some bigger waves somewhere. And work my way up to doing some decent sized waves. I think that'd be really fun. Obviously I want to go back to the CrossFit Games and compete there again. We're not sure how the season's going to pan out, but that's my sport, and that's what I'd like, I'm still pursuing. And at the moment I'm taking it year by year. I'm not saying, I'm going to compete for another 3 years or 4 years. I'm just kind of taking it year by year, and I'll do it as long as it makes me happy. But other than competing in the sport of CrossFit, I'd like to go surf some big waves. I'd like to, get my skydive license. I would love to, I'm actually toying around with kite surfing at the moment, and I'm really enjoying that too. So I'll just, anything that kind of is exhilarating, and it's usually risky stuff. So I don't know, maybe my CrossFit career might be cut short from one of these other risky activities, but I'm not about to, put everything else on hold just to compete in CrossFit. I'm still going to live the way that I want to live and do the fun things that I want to do because, why not?
Absolutely. Live life to the full rather than what's surrounded by you and what you should be doing.
Oh yeah, totally. Everyone said, don't do the Ironman. You'll never be able to compete in CrossFit ever again. You'll lose too much weight. You'll get too weak at the same time. And I was like, I don't know about that. I think I'll be all right. And I was quite fine. Nothing really changed. I got a little bit lighter, but only by about 2 or 3 kilos. And, I go back to lifting pretty much the same weight, maybe lifting, I might be lifting to the extent of what I'd be lifting on a bad day. But yeah, within 2 weeks, I was back to normal.
Yeah. It's insane. I think people think they know the answers, but until you go out and do it yourself, you don't know, right?
Totally. I agree.
So James, tell us, for everybody listening right now, what would be, now you've done all these different methods of like training, recovery and food. And I did read that you don't drink the normal tap water. I'm so glad to hear that, because I don't either.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us about, what would be your advice for everybody out there that is living an everyday life? What would be the best things that they could do to help amplify their life?
Totally. So probably some key things that I would focus on for just, some very small things that have have a big impact on the way that you function day to day. Number one is sleep. If we're not addressing sleep, it could go to be the extent of making sure that your room is really dark at night time. It's nice and quiet and silent, making sure it's at a good temperature. So if we're optimizing sleep, you're going to be performing a lot better. The other thing is hydration, and how much water you are getting into your body, and making sure you're getting enough. It might be a thing for you to put some sea salt in your water to get some extra minerals. So sleep, water, like hydration, and then there's so many good things, but you take care of your nutrition as well. Give your body the materials it needs to heal and to function well, and then get out in the sun. Those would be my 4 things. Get out in the sun, good nutrition, good water quality, and sleep well.
And I think it's so simple, but yet we get so like wrapped up thinking, oh, there's got to be more to it.
Yeah, I'll take a supplement instead and I'll be all good.
Yeah, no, I love that advice. I think it's definitely something that anybody could take on tomorrow, or even right now.
Totally. Yeah. Oh, totally. Like maybe instead of like scrolling Instagram, and don't get me wrong, like there are times where I will scroll all the way up until I go to sleep, but be conscious of the fact of what you're doing, and then make an effort at some point, to, instead of scrolling all the way up until you're about to go to sleep, put it down, read a book instead, and you'll probably have a way better sleep, or listen to a podcast, or listen to something that you enjoy, instead of just, having your eyes fixed to a blue screen.
And I think too, like what you were saying, becoming aware of it, it's just, as time goes on, like there'll be some days that you catch yourself and, like you said, it's like, oh my God, I need to go to bed now. But over time, you generally become more conscious and more aware. So like, I think it's really important to not be hard on yourself thinking, oh my God, I'm not doing it right, that's why I'm not performing. It's about learning, and over your experience of your life, you'll just become more efficient and better at your
Totally.
awareness.
Yeah, it doesn't happen overnight. You just have to work on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today, James.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.